All right, so recently I made a video on my reasons to be bullish on Bitcoin, and today I wanted to change it up a little bit and do a video. What are the things that concern me, or maybe reasons to be bearish? I wouldn't say to be bearish, but what are the things that concern me as far as Bitcoin goes going forward? Now, the first thing that I would leave it off or bring up here is the vast majority of the stuff you hear is just utter trash. It's from people who don't know what they're talking about. You hear things like, oh, well, you know, the halving coming up, it's going to become unprofitable for the miners. It's like, if you genuinely believe that, you know so little about Bitcoin, I don't even know what to say, because you don't understand the most basics of how the system works. It's like thinking you understand the stock market, but not understanding the concept of earnings, right? It's just utterly insane that people can make those arguments and with a straight face. It's just crazy. So you hear other stuff, like people, like a lot of the traditional finance guys, they'll lump crypto all together, like it's all the same, it's all one big blob, kind of like how stocks, they're all the same. There's no difference between the penny stock that's losing money and Apple or Google, right? There's just no difference. It's just crypto, right? So this is the first thing that I would bring up here, is that a lot of the stuff you hear comes from people that have no idea at all what they're talking about, or people that have a different agenda to push. And that brings me right into there's really two things that concern me, and there's two things. The first one that I think is possible, although very, very unlikely. This is actually the third thing, but this one's so unlikely at this point that I think it's like a 1% chance, is government regulation. Given there's already ETFs approved, given how long it's been around, I mean, it's been around for 15 years. That's not that long at all compared to virtually all other asset classes. But if the government was going to regulate it, they would have done it before they approved ETFs. So that argument really makes no sense to me, at least where we're at right now. Technically, one thing to bring up here, for all the altcoin fans out there, the government easily could regulate the vast majority of altcoins. If they wanted to shut down Ethereum, they could do it. If they wanted to shut down Solana, they could do it. I mean, Solana shuts itself down a lot of times. If they wanted to shut down XRP, they could do it. This is a cold, hard truth that a lot of people don't want to hear, but it's a reality. So let's be honest there. Bitcoin, a little bit different in that if the government wants to shut down Bitcoin, there's no individual or corporation that they could go after, like they could with Ethereum, Solana, XRP, the list goes on and on and on. If there's an individual or a corporation that they can go after, they can regulate it. At least they can try. Bitcoin, there's no individual, there's no corporation they can go after. And you've already seen very, very powerful countries like China try to regulate it and not have a lot of success. They had a little bit of success, but it's not gone. So the idea that the government's going to regulate it out of existence is extremely unlikely, like extremely unlikely. So that's, I mean, short of doing like tin pot third world, like North Korea tactics, like that's pretty much the only way that they could genuinely regulate it. And if you're going to argue that your government's going to try and pull stuff like that, I don't know what to tell you, right? I really don't know what to tell you. So let's get right into it. There's really two things that have genuine concerns for me. Number one is the I don't want to admit I'm wrong factor, which is something that I brought up a lot before. And this is a prime example of it right here. Peter Schiff, in August of 2017, right? So we're going back quite a while here. Just had a client liquidate his entire IRA and put 100% into Bitcoin. What are the odds this turns out to be a wise move? And then Gandalf, Bitcoin Gandalf on Twitter says, Peter's client is up 1,240% since he moved his IRA into Bitcoin. Again, this is the problem with a lot of these people. They're wrong over and over and over and over again, but yet have you ever got Peter Schiff be like, yeah, I was wrong on Bitcoin? You've never heard that. Like I always bring up, there's a finance podcast I listen to quite a bit. And again, these guys are great when it comes to stocks. Like they're very, very good. But when it comes, they're the type of people that lump crypto all together and they think that it's all the same. At least that's how they come off. And they're not like Peter Schiff levels of stupidity, but they're not far off, certainly. And the reason I say that is that I've been listening to them for probably 3 years, and even when Bitcoin was at its bottom, they still weren't like, yeah, I think this is the time to buy. Like, at no point have they ever said that. So this is the problem with a lot of these people, is that I think that there's a significant percentage of the population, and honestly, I think it's the majority, that will not ever admit they're wrong. I think that there's probably 50% of the population that would rather lose their house, that would rather have to work till the day they die, than simply just admit they're wrong and allocate 5, 10, maybe 20% to Bitcoin. Like, that is how ignorant and pig-headed a lot of people are. And this is a reality of life that, for the love of God, I do not know why it's not talked about more. And I think the reality is, the reason is that the majority of people fall into the category, so that's why it's not talked about and it's not discussed. So that is the first reason, that I think that there's a significant percentage of people and a significant percentage of the traditional finance world that will never admit they're wrong. Bitcoin can return double, triple, quadruple what the market returns over the long run, and it could do it for the next 50 years. And I guarantee you that there'll still be people like, yep, it's still too risky, all the usual garbage FUD you hear. So that's the first reason that makes me concerned. And the reason that it's not concerning, people say, okay, well, would you sell, or is this? It's not that much of a concern to me, because you still have very low single-digit percent of the population that is actively buying and hodling. And I think that there is, 10, 20, 30% of the population that is smart enough to see the writing on the wall. If they haven't already, they will soon. So I think that we have maybe 1 or 2% adoption right now, I think is fair to say. I think that realistically that number gets to 20 or 30%. Maybe higher. Maybe once people lose their house and have to work till the day they die and their kids see that, maybe that'll be enough to wake more people up. But I think that the average person grossly overstates the competence of the average person. So that's the first thing that concerns me. The second thing that concerns me is actually somewhat similar, but I think it's a little bit different of a concept. And the second thing is, this is more of a long-term thing as well, is that Bitcoin continues to return way more than the market, whether it's double, triple, 4, 5, 10x the market over 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And average people, average everyday working people, become millionaires or multimillionaires. And the most likely scenario, at least over the next decade or so, is that inflation's looking like it's going to continue to run hot. People are going to continue voting for the same stupid, horrible policies that they have vote for in the West, at least as an aggregate. And again, life is going to continue to become more unaffordable, at least in certain areas. Again, just the general oddities of life, right? In that it's going to be harder for the average person to get by. And those people are going to see that, hey, these average people that are making similar money to me, they got rich. They're 40, 50 years old, and they're retiring, living high on the hog. And I'm still working, living paycheck to paycheck. That's not fair. They need to be taxed. They need to be regulated. Honestly, that is my biggest concern when it comes to Bitcoin. That right there is my biggest concern. Because I think that it's obvious in that governments are going to continue to spend way more than they have. People are going to continue to vote for the same stupid policies over and over again. And the inevitable consequence of that is that the smart money, right? Like, the smart people will continue to make money. The dumb people will continue to just make their same stupid mistakes over and over again. And when the reality of those stupid mistakes comes to pass, rather than just admit they're wrong, like any sane, rational thinking person would do, they're just going to double down. and they're going to vote to tax and persecute the smart people. And how do we know that? Because that's what almost always happens. Just look at history, right? Look at it, especially recent history. Like super long ago, I think it might be a little bit different, not that much, but recent history is people just do not want to admit they're wrong, right? Like I said, there's a lot of people that out there that genuinely would rather be living out on the streets and maintain their delusions than be living comfortably and not maintain those delusions, then admit they're wrong. And like I said, this is something that it really boggles my mind. It's not talked about more. So, and again, there's a lot of people that can afford to be wrong as well. I mean, look at like the Peter Schiffs and these the traditional finance people, right? Most of these people are I mean, Peter Schiff is very wealthy, I think, but a lot of these people, they're doing just fine, so they can afford to be wrong. And for a lot of these people, if they're looking at it in terms of, okay, my yearly income is going to be 500,000 or it's going to be $1 million, like your lifestyle, even if it's $250,000 versus like 300,000-400,000, like your lifestyle does not change that much. Like going from 100,000 to 250, 300, like yeah, your lifestyle is probably going to change quite a bit. But the more money you make once you're already wealthy, the less change, the more you need to change to actually see something significant. Like if your net worth is 100 million, going to 200 million, like honestly, how much is your lifestyle going to change? Like very, very, very little. So this is the thing, is that a lot of these people, they can afford to be wrong. Like I think this is the reason that Peter Schiff continues to maintain his delusions, is that it's not affecting him at all. He's got a very successful business, and a lot of these other finance guys too. They're already making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year salaries. Like, why would they change? They're already moderately well off to very well off. And the reality of Bitcoin, this is another thing too. You hear the last thing I'll leave it on here is that you constantly hear, well, a lot of these people, they just bought when it was low and got lucky and they're just hoarding it now. And it's like, baked into that argument is the idea that if, let's just say all the Bitcoin was in the world was distributed equally today, that 10 years from now, it still would be distributed equally. But no one that has an IQ above 50 would argue that. Because if all the Bitcoin in the world were divided up equally today, the vast majority of people would sell it as soon as humanly possible. And the smart people would buy it from them and they would keep it. And this is the reality behind the people that make these arguments. Like, they just do not want to admit they're wrong. And a lot of what they're saying is just projection, right? When they accuse people of being greedy and selfish and all the usual, it's just projection. So anyway, I wanted to make a video about this because I think there's a lot of reasons that people bring up, but when you actually understand this stuff, and this is the thing, this is the last thing I'll leave it on here. The thing that bothers me most about people, it's not that you disagree with them or that kind of thing. The thing that bothers me is they have a very strong worldview, but they have done zero research into the other side. Like a lot of the people that can't stand Bitcoin, they've done zero research into it. If I ask them, what would the average person, like the average hardcore Bitcoin, like what would they say for the reasons behind them owning it? They wouldn't have the foggiest clue what to say if you asked them that. But you're still bearish? Like you haven't even considered the other side of the point of view, or the other side of the debate. How could you be so ignorant to have a strong worldview when you haven't even considered it? And there's also a lot of people, they're not smart enough to consider it. Like the average person, they don't know how money is created. They don't understand the banking system. They don't understand the bond market. They don't understand the stock market. Like, of course you're not going to understand it. You put zero effort into understanding it. But my point there would be, you don't understand the banking system, but you're perfectly comfortable giving the bank your money. You don't understand real estate. You're perfectly fine buying a house. You don't understand the bond market, but you're perfectly fine investing 40% of your income into bonds. You don't understand the stock market. You're perfectly fine investing 60% in stocks. Why would you let not understanding Bitcoin not to not take a position. It just makes no sense logically. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for more.